Jai Guru, everybody.
Jai Guru.
Welcome to the next episode of Awake, the Life of Yogananda podcast. Today we are talking about minute 37 of the movie, and we have the first time that one of our guests comes on for the second time. So we have Carolina with us. Hello, welcome Carolina, how are you?
Hello, welcome everybody to me again.
But this time Carolina, it's not Carolina, is it anymore? Because it's the Kriyaban Carolina, which you weren't before.
Wow.
So she's Carolina reborn.
I'm reborn now. It's a
second
new one.
Carolina the second. Okay.
And it really works because I really feel better.
Awesome.
After the Kriya practice. It has actually, and someone even mentioned, you're different now. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing this technique and I think it works.
That is very good news. Very good news.
You had your ceremony online, right?
I didn't have a ceremony, like a talk on the phone with a nun. Yeah. And she's just like, okay, we will send you the stuff.
Okay.
And they send a little booklet so we can make our ceremony here at home.
Oh, that's so amazing.
And all that stuff.
That's so amazing.
Very cool.
It was cool. And one day maybe in Mother Center, I'll go there and get a real one, or even here in Brazil. Who knows?
Yeah. I think you're allowed to attend after you've your career, and you're allowed to attend as many ceremonies as you want to.
Yeah.
Nice. So minute 37 is about Swami Dhirananda mostly. We're not at the controversial part of Swami Dhirananda yet. So this is more like the part where Yogananda needs help at Mother Center, and because he's going to go on a nationwide tour and he needs someone to look after Mother Center. And so he calls Dhirananda in, and so we have Dayamata talking about it. We have Chidananda talking about it, how they are childhood friends and how they kind of came in. Let's start from the beginning, how they met. His name is, I'm probably going to butcher the name. It's like Basu Kumar Bagchi. Did I say that well, Priyank?
Yep.
Nice. And they met, I think, in college. Is that correct, Priyank? What do you
so
facts you have about that?
Yeah, so when Master was with Sri Yukteswar after meeting him and stuff, Sri Yukteswar sent him to college, the Scottish Church College, in 1911, and he basically that is right, and so they met there. So Mukunda's limited attendance at college produced a new friend who would remain an integral part of his life and work for almost 20 years. His name was Basu Kumar Bagchi, and he was almost exactly 2 years Mukunda's junior. In Mejda, Basu is described as talented, intelligent, and religious-minded. He and his Brahmin family were devotees of Baduri Mahashaya, the levitating saint, and he, at Mukunda's suggestion, was initiated into Kriya Yoga by Swami Dhirananda. Basu and Mukunda became so inseparable at one point that Basu lived clandestinely at Forgarpur Road, and they talk about that in the film, where he would sneak him food and they would meditate together and things like that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. No, it's like I think Dhirananda's family, they were following another path, if I'm not mistaken. I think they were following. The name escaped me now. Do you know it by any chance? No? Okay. But anyways, so basically Dhirananda he felt like he didn't have the time and privacy at his own home to meditate. So he snuck into Mukunda's attic and was meditating there. That's a lovely story. Did you hear about that before as well, Chris?
Yeah, and you can clearly see in this minute how warm Yogananda's feeling. How happy he was. When he was with him, just from the clips that we saw, and it's clearly like a real brotherhood between the two of them. So it was the first time I'd seen, or I saw, clips like that, and you could tell that there was this real bond between the two of them. I just know a little bit of the controversy, and that's kind of how I, came to early know about them. But clearly, when they were growing up, they were a good support for each other, and I think, souls probably met in a previous life. I'm sure it wasn't a coincidence looking at them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, imagine you grow up and I mean, Yogananda wasn't like the big guru that he became later on in his life. So he was just some friend in his school, right? And imagine you have the karma to be best friends with Yogananda in school age, and then even help him build an organization. Did you, Carolina, did you hear about Dhirananda before you watched the Awake movie, or was that the first time you heard of him?
It was the first time, because I read Meshta last year, and that's where they actually say. And I found it here. It was Baduri Mahashaya, the levitating saint, the one that Dhirananda's family used to follow.
Nice, thank you.
But I didn't know anything about him before, just really during the movie.
Yeah, it was the same for me, mainly because also I wasn't really paying that much attention. Like, I feel like as we are recording those podcasts, we are much more interested in all the historic backgrounds, and like those kind of things, they become much more interesting. And then let's continue in the timeline a bit. So Priyank, like you said, they met at Scottish Church College, and then I feel like the first time they really worked together was when they started, like Guruji was graduating from college, and then he started the school in Ranchi. And I think from day one, Dhirananda was on board there along with Satyananda. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. But they actually started an ashram before that. So before the school moved to Ranchi, and so what happened was, during the war years, Calcutta was rife with intrigue, tension, agitation, and pathos. But Yogananda and his comrades were focused on spirituality. And by 1916, it was time to step up their efforts. He was, after all, a Swami with a mandate from his guru to serve. And by now, his second in command, Basu Kumar Bagchi, had earned a master's degree in psychology. Interesting. The group set out to fix up their ashram on Pitambar Bhattacharya Lane, the property that belonged to Tulsi Bose's family. Led by Yogananda, the young men renovated the building and landscaped the ground. Sananda Ghosh describes their activities in Mejda, that meetings were held regularly with scripture readings, devotional songs and kirtans, spiritual discourses, and Kriya Yoga meditation. At the end of the meetings, fruit and sweets were distributed to all. These sweets were usually included in like rice pudding, and at Yogananda's insistence. So this school then it was based on Sri Yukteswara's astrological advice. It was named Brahmacharya Vidyalaya, or the School of Divinity, and it was inaugurated in March 22nd, 1917, in sync with the spring equinox, apparently. And then that is the school that then was moved to Ranchi at the Maharaja's palace, or summer palace, and then that became the Ranchi School, and now the headquarters of YSS, I believe.
And then 2017, that's that same year that we now say YSS was founded, right? So that goes back to that founding that organization. Yeah, fantastic. And so they had like a really great relationship, Dhirananda, Satyananda, and Guruji, right? They were like the trio. I mean, we all know that like later on, karmically something happened, and that relationship kind of fell apart. But at this point here, they were like really two people that helped Guruji a lot, and founding that school was like the first kind of thing that Guruji did, the first organization building that he did, and he was like basically an integral part of that, which is pretty great. And then afterwards, when Guruji needed help later in his organizational time, he always thought those two are people that I can rely on. So, like, we know later on it kind of fell apart, but at this time they were like really, there was really a strong bond between them. So I feel like we need to like show a differentiated picture, and at this time this is like a really good thing that works well. Do you remember those pictures that we saw earlier when we talked about Guruji having that Ranchi school? There were like always all those kids, and then there were those three, Satyananda, Guruji, and Dhirananda together. And I always found those three, they looked together like the people who were like running the show. What did you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, I thought, you know, the pictures and the video clips and everything in this minute were very endearing, very it was very warming to see that Yogananda, as was mentioned in some of the words spoken in this minute, that he needed help. You know, he had a, you know, beloved friend and a capable teacher. You know, he was very well liked. You know, that's Dayavata saying that, clearly very well thought of. And they obviously went through a lot of pains together from, you know, the early organizations of the How to Live schools. And whenever you do look at these pictures, you think like, what a journey it must have been for these young men to go through this, something so significant, and would go on to have you know, great foundations and do great things, you know, 100 years on. So yeah, I look at it and kind of feel that brotherhood, feel the love, and you can see the bond between them that would have built the foundations of what we can see today as a successful organization.
But the brotherhood actually was more than that, because when he was at Ranchi, when they started that school in Ranchi, apparently that's when he became Swami Dhirananda, and Yogananda actually initiated him, or initiated him into the Swami order. Now that's a strange one, because then if someone's initiating you into the sannyas and becoming a sannyas, that almost makes him your guru, doesn't it? So they're not like peers at that point. If someone's initiating you, then he then becomes your guru, and that is, I think, quite important for later on in their relationship. You know, when things fell apart, and we'll discuss that in the minutes to come. But you know, part of their, you know, disagreements were, for example, who published, you know, how much is owed to me. I helped you publish this, that, the other. But if you're serving your guru, then you don't take credit. You have to give your credit to the guru, right? Because you're doing it under his tutelage, or, you know, under his guidance, or under his beckoning, you know, requirements. So really, then it stops being your work. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
Maybe it's the how this relationship evolved. So they were peers, like you said in the beginning, and then I also read somewhere that in the beginning they just referred to Guruji as Swamiji, but then later on he became Guruji to them. And maybe because this relationship evolved so much, that it was hard for them sometimes to recognize Guruji as their guru. Maybe something like that played a role. What do you think, Carolina, about that?
I actually found an excerpt from this Satyananda's book, Swami Satyananda, and it says that Yogananda was called Bara, top or elder Swami. Dhirananda was called Meja, middle Swami. And Satyananda, being a few years younger, was called Chota, or younger Swami. And later, however, they all called Yogananda Guruji. So I think from this, I remember there's also a story in Meshta that during college, Guruji said to one of the students, like, hey, he heard a voice saying like, this kid next to you is your disciple. And he goes and he's like, hey, I'm your guru. And the kid is like, what are you talking about? This is crazy. I want to listen to the teacher and you should be quiet. But then he goes home and I think he dreams about it. And then he comes the next day to school and he's like, yeah, I dream of it and you're really my guru. So I think Yogananda, since early age, he was already a guru. So I think it was not difficult for people to call him Guruji or something, because I think he just had this leadership presence, and people would just follow like his magnetic presence.
What is that book called by Satyananda?
As what I found, it's called Yogananda Sangha. I'll see if I can get more information on it.
Life, yeah. It's not the one that's as I knew him. Is it not that one? Is that a different book?
I think that's the
Yogananda.
subtitle. I think it's Yogananda Sangha, and then Yogananda as I understood him. Yeah.
Okay, right. It's cool. It's cool. And the other thing I was going to mention about that is, gosh, what was it? Yeah. So Yogananda, when he was a child, he would often find people that would approach him and recognize him as their guru, and he's like, then he had to initiate them as a child, and obviously these are disciples from past lives or whatever, and he just gave them the technique as he had heard it from from his mother or father, from Lahiri Mahashai. So that initiation, that Carolina had, other people similarly had it in that way, not not in the orthodox way as you'd expect.
Yeah, even in this story, the two penniless boys in Brindaban, right? There was a similar thing happening.
Yeah. So my point was that even though he was a peer in the sense the similar sort of age, it doesn't mean that they're in the similar level of spiritual maturity. That's a different matter altogether, isn't it? Because you could have you could labor that point.
Well, I was going to throw in like an observation on it was highlighted that he had his parents were basically blocking him from being able to do his meditation work that he wanted to do. And so there's somewhat of an inferior position already, there maybe karmically or something in relation to Guruji, that Guruji kind of takes him under his wings and says, look, come here, I'll take care of you. You can't, there was almost that, from the beginning, and, whether this is karmically, designed and to bring them together and all the rest of it, that clearly continued, and maybe there was some harboring of, there's something harbored in that, difficulty, obviously, as a child, into later adult life, or, I'm not a psychologist, but, it just kind of seems to be mentioned a lot that he kind of had troubles. Guruji seemed to, be the problem solver, that continued.
Yeah, I think there's the funniest ways how people work off their karma, right? And maybe this is also one of them, right? Where you have your guru and then it just doesn't work out, but then maybe it works out in the future at some point. So there's like some historic comparisons. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Let's move on to the next thing. So one other interesting point is the book, The Science of Religion, which is based on, at least that's how I learned it, is based on the talk that Guruji gave at the Congress of Religious Liberals in Boston when he came in 1920, not 2020. And yeah, like over 100 years ago. And my thought was basically that this is the verbatim talk in a book, basically. But there is also other theories about this. And Phil Goldberg writes about this. What is the other theory, Priyank, or what is the facts on this?
Lost him. He's frozen.
Oh, we lost him. Okay. So I unless someone else wants to, I can like say that basically there's a lot of like Dhirananda is mentioned in the book, and Yogananda thanks him for the work that he did on it. And so maybe there's like the idea that maybe he has written part of it or something like that. Have you heard that, Chris, as well?
To be honest, I haven't actually. I would look to Carolina to see if you have any knowledge on that, Carolina.
I actually missed it because it cut my internet went unstable and I didn't hear what Mike said.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh, so we're talking about the book, The Science of Religion. So there is a section in there where it said, at least Phil Goldberg mentions this, where Guruji thanks Swami Dhirananda, Satyananda for their work on the science of religion, so that maybe they wrote part of it, or I don't know, helped doing some of the editing and things like that. Have you heard that before?
I know that Dhirananda was highly intellectual person, like and also that his English was a bit better than Yogananda, so he was probably helping him write a lot of stuff. And I know they worked in the beginning. They were working a lot with healing, but also they would distribute like pamphlets and circulars, mission statements, and so I think Dhirananda could have been like his first editor for his writings. I wouldn't doubt that maybe he does have some participation. I know that then I think it was Taramata who was the main editor. Was it Taramata? Laurie Pratt, right? The one
I think so, yeah. Yes, Taramata.
Worked with most of the editing because, I mean, he needed an editor to really go through all of those writings and make sure that everything is fine. And apparently Laurie was also like his right hand on these matters also. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think she's one of the few who met Dhirananda. I think it's only her and Sister Kamala that actually met him, because then he was gone and no one else, like Dayamata didn't meet him. Many other devotees who were like main roles, they didn't meet Dhirananda.
Yeah, that is the fact that that's often forgotten, right? That when Dhirananda left the ashram, I think it was in 29 or 28, something like that, most of the Guruji's devotees that we know hadn't joined the ashram yet, so none of them knew him, basically, right? Yeah. So let's go along. So then Guruji is in Boston, and then we talked about this. He went to Los Angeles, and he needed somebody to take care of the operation that he started in Boston. So he wrote a letter to Dhirananda and Satyananda and told them one of the two should come to America and should help him take care of the Boston operations. And then the way I read it was that Swami Satyananda first considered it, but then he decided he doesn't want to go. And then Swami Dhirananda, Guruji wrote another letter and said, Dhirananda, you must come, you must help me in Boston. Is this the kind of how you guys heard it as well?
Slight variation. So in Phil Goldberg's biography, so Swami Satyananda at the time was serving at the Puri ashram, Sri Yukteswar's Puri ashram, and then he apparently demurred, so he didn't respond or didn't want to or didn't feel like it, and then he decided then to Swami Satyananda decided to help Yogananda's school in Ranchi. So then he took over in Ranchi and then served at the Ranchi School for the next 20 years. And apparently Sri Yukteswar said ominously that he felt something inauspicious in Dhirananda's departure to the West.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Sri Yukteswar wouldn't be the first time that he would know something like this in advance, right? That if things don't work out perfectly, right?
Yeah, interesting. I hadn't heard that before. It's, but in general, yes. I mean, that's basically what I've heard more or less, and it strikes me like how reluctant people were to really leave. Their what they know. Maybe in India, Yogananda was reluctant to leave himself, and clearly. There is this divine pull to try to bring this Eastern, philosophy and ideas to the West. But how let's say, fragile it is to maybe have not have happened. It's kind of like a little bit breathtaking to think like, wow, yeah, I mean, the fine lines between success and failure. Let's say it's I wonder how things happen at all, but to hear these stories are just makes me more appreciative of what I suppose we have today, and thankful for Dhirananda's part in it. As you said, maybe ominous signs and but necessary in the long term.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, the things didn't work out perfectly, but then the work he did was probably necessary. Otherwise, the whole organization wouldn't be in the place it is now. If we go back to the stories in the beginning, how they met and how they were friends when they were young, that scenario that you have to meditate elsewhere because you can't meditate at home. Did any of you ever feel like, I can identify with this? I would love to have a friend like Guruji where I can meditate in their attic instead of at my house.
You took the I suppose the thought out of my own head. I've blessed in many ways, but I suppose meditation in Northern Ireland isn't generally considered or thought of, and sometimes getting the peace and quiet and the alone time can be challenging. But I remember being I built a boat and lived on it with my fiance at the time, and just trying to find a place that wasn't like filthy and dirty, and had where you could go for meditation was always a challenge. So when I heard this story again with Dhirananda, it did make me think that it's always a safe, Yogananda providing a safe haven is something I'm sure a lot of people would want to take advantage of or have in their lives, for sure, at some point.
Carolina?
For me, not really. Actually, my mother, she was the one when I was 18, she was like, oh, you should do yoga. But I only started to meditate. I was already living on my own, and I live on a farm, and there's just nothing here. My closest neighbor is like 1 kilometer away. So it's pretty much quiet. I used to have a cat back in the days that it was hard to meditate with him because he would just knock on the door and want to come in. And if he would come in, he would jump on me, and it was a big mess. But honestly, my situation is actually a little bit opposite, because since I started to meditate and really not only meditate, but really take up the lifestyle of the whole SRF teachings and everything, I actually lost a few friends, like people that I used to hang out a lot with. They were just gone. Like, as my routine and my interests started to change, these people were also like, they were gone. And I don't think, we can still say hi to each other, but I don't think we will have the same connections, because it's just not like sort of compatible to the whole thing. So in a way it was liberating, but in another way a little sad also, to like you're just used to some people sometimes, and then they're not just there anymore. But in the end, it's all really positive. And I do have my private space to meditate.
Nice.
Is it that cabin that you're in, perhaps?
No, it's actually reforming it. It's giving a lot of trouble. I'm reforming it. My little temple, it's on the other thing there.
Oh,
and
cool.
The cat actually invaded it today. I put it a little door, and I was like, oh, you're starting to act like the other one, huh? I'm gonna put like some sprinkles, automatic sprinkles on the door. Throwing some water on him. Like, it's not a water, I saw it. It's like a foam or something. It's not really a squeeze of water, but it's like a little smoke of water. And the cat goes away.
Bring it. Yeah. Maybe the cat will start meditating one time.
I always tell him, I was like, you listen to this when I chant Om. He he likes to listen to them. You look for Yogananda, you look for Guruji when you become a Hindu. You have to have each other.
I remember when I had a cat years ago and I would meditate on the floor, then she would sometimes come up to me and start purring, and I was like, oh no, this thing.
It's crazy. You can disrupt the meditation. It's not good. I have a lot of things like to cover the windows and all, so that he doesn't come in and start purring everywhere.
When I'm in Brazil on this eco village, we're building the eco village as we're living there as well, and the day starts super early, 7 a.m. So if you don't get your meditation in or your practice in before 7 a.m., forget about it, because the builders and everybody there, it's like, you know, the Brazilians are very loud, you know, that everybody's shouting at each other and drinking, you know, drinking coffee and just having this wild time at like 7 a.m. Whereas, you know, yeah, so it's I find, you know, some of the hardest things in meditation is the practical elements of it, right? And it's a good question, like you know, how do you actually, you know, you need to be so committed no matter where you are or what you're doing to try to find the space to meditate. It's easier said than done sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I lived at Priyanks for a while, they had their own meditation room, which was like equipped with everything, altar and harmonium and all different kinds of seatings that you could choose, like floor, chair, all different kinds of cushions. That was like the deluxe experience, I feel.
I'm trying to make a deluxe version now.
Nice.
For me, meditating at home was easy enough. I had time to myself. But when I started, you know, getting into spirituality, I was really, you know, hungry to find a path that I could commit to. And my mum was really scared that, you know, if I went to certain paths, that then I'd stop my education and, you know, I wouldn't get married. I might become a monk and things like that. So she'd physically stop me from going to some like meditation centers near me, like there's a Brahma Kumari, which is a very popular meditation group in around the world actually. But there's a center right near my house where I used to live, and my mum just would not let me go to that because she knew that I would like go all in and education would just be down the window.
If you think about it, it's very, very much like how Guruji was brought up, right? His parents were also scared that he wouldn't get a job and just meditates, becomes a monk.
Some Indian traits just don't change.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You know, on this topic is side topic, so I'll not go into it, but meditation in like Christianity, you know, the mentions of meditation there, you know, it's something that is in there, but you've got to look for it. And it's funny living in the UK, living in Northern Ireland. It's just like otherworldly, but at the same time, it's like it's kind of like right between the lines of what is taught in the Bible and so on and so forth. But yeah, I'm jealous of you, Priyank, to have that. That's such a great experience. Yeah. With you, Caroline.
Very good. All right, so we covered the minute pretty well now. Do you guys have anything else that you want to mention about this?
Yes, I do. So we just let's talk briefly about what Yogananda called Swami Dhirananda to LA for. So we know that he called Swami Dhirananda from his school in Ranchi to Boston. So he was in Boston, and that allowed Yogananda to do other things, go on tours, lecture tours, whilst Swami Dhirananda was in Boston and covering their meditation group that was the foundation for everything really. But let's hear a little bit about what they said of each other. So let's hear what Swami Yogananda said He said, "I'm powerless to tell how greatly he has helped me to carrying on my educational work in India and Boston, or of the good which the world has derived from his ideal character and his exalted spiritual life." So yeah, and then he says he will likewise take charge of the LA headquarters whenever I am out of necessity, on lecture tours, etc., and spreading God's message of all-round education and human perfection. And apparently Swami Dhirananda said in turn at Mount Washington, he said, "Being connected with Swami Yogananda for over 15 years, I know what he has done to me and what he can do to others and to the world. If I am of any help to Swami and to the cause with which he upholds most sincerely, and with the great spirit that he has always shown, I am willing to do that. I will be faithful to him and God and to yourselves." So they were a busy duo, apparently, other than that statement, which obviously didn't come to fruition in the end, which we'll discuss later. But apparently, there was magazine to design, edit, the East West magazine published, which was published like every 3 months, I believe. There were other publications to distribute, such as The Science of Religion, The Psychological Chart, Scientific Healing Affirmations, The Yoga, the System of Physical, Mental, and Spiritual Perfection. And apparently Swami Dhirananda's own newly completed book, which was called Philosophical Insights, which contained this dedication: "Inscribed to Swami Yogananda Giriji, my college friend, teacher, and guiding inspiration." So lots of things happened in their relationship. It's quite complex, we'd say. Very strange, line or blurry line between guru and colleague, and it seemed to carry on, didn't it?
I really like the images, those images of them both, and they're smiling with their long hairs, and they just look like brothers, like for real.
Yeah.
And I look at them, I was like, they look like two angels. I really like their faces in the image, and there's like this innocence in their faces. It's just really, it's a little magical, that picture of them both.
Yeah.
Determination as well. Like they're very focused, aren't they, in all the pictures? And they did such a great job actually pulling in all the images and that they put together. There was 4 men, one of which is Yogananda, with all sitting in lotus posture. Did we know who they all are?
I think the one to the left of Guruji is Swami Satyananda, I believe. But I don't know the others.
Yeah, maybe if any of the listeners or anybody, Carolina or Mike, if you guys know.
They're all 4 in like really good lotus posture and just looking. And the others are looking at the picture, at the camera. Yogananda is like looking straight into the spiritual eye. It's quite. We published this picture of Yogananda. Mukunda, sorry, he's probably 18 or something at the time, and this has been the most popular image of him like meditating with his eyes, like. He's got his hair like kind of back here, and you can see he's mostly naked, so you can see his chest and you can see his beads, tulsi beads, I think they look like. So it's must be a very potent picture, because it's always our most popular one, and we publish that one on our Instagram and things like that.
Yeah, whenever I saw this picture, I thought their faces look illuminated, whatever way, if it's the light or whatever it is, but you can just see the illumination coming from their mind.
This picture, for all those, if you can just make that out on my iPad.
Okay.
This picture.
I was looking for it.
36:48, minute 36:48.
Who is Satyananda there?
Yeah, I think that's Satyananda there, isn't there?
Right next to him?
Guruji, yes. Is that him? You've read his book, so perhaps you can.
Like a Balananda a little bit, but it's younger.
Yeah.
Than it should be.
I'll have a look on the Awake book and see if I can find who is in that picture.
age-wise, it would make sense if it was Satyananda, right?
Yeah,
He
looks
he
slightly younger. Yeah.
Mhm.
I know later he will also have another assistant that is Brahmacharya Nerode. Will later be, I don't know, is he on the movie also?
I don't think he's on the movie, but yeah, there's lots of things about issues that he had with him as well, isn't there?
Because there's this video of a wedding, and I think that's him. And
oh, is that him?
Yeah.
So that shot is definitely in the movie, but I don't think they discuss him at all. So when that shot comes in, and I can tell you when it is, it's in minute 47, the wedding ceremony. And the reason I've noted that down is because Chris has been asking to cover what's in the SRF wedding ceremony. So we're going to discuss SRF wedding ceremonies in detail when that comes in. And we're apparently going to have to discuss Nerode as well.
Getting ready for the big moment.
Oh, yes.
3 different weddings, yeah.
Well, that's in minute 47, so that's like in 10 more episodes and 10. So 3 months. Would we have covered it before your SRF wedding?
Yeah.
There's actually a very beautiful retreat in Minas Gerais. Have you heard of it? Retreat of Itamonte.
No.
It's in the middle of the forest, and they have like a Babaji plateau with a statue of Babaji, you know that, and it's just like you're on top of the mountain, seeing the forest and everything. It's a beautiful place for a wedding.
There you go, Chris.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I haven't heard of it.
And the other retreat, we have like 5 retreats in Brazil, retreat spots.
Nice.
That you can choose for having a SRF wedding.
Yeah. It's good to see SRF like continuing to grow, all around Brazil and the world. So many great spots. So good to hear.
Yeah, we heard that from Yuri as well, right? That there are so many SRF retreats. Got a bit jealous about that. Yeah.
You know, when we were choosing to interview Yuri, like we contacted him, and then literally like 5 minutes later, Carolina messaged me saying, "Oh, you guys should contact Yuri from Brazil. He's got this fantastic Yogananda Brazil page." We're like, well, Carolina, you are in sync with this podcast. And then that's happened like 2 or 3 times now. She's like, "So you guys should do this." I was like, "Yeah, we just literally 3 seconds ago are doing that."
See? That's the power of Kriya.
There you go.
I'm sure you had it before Carolina as well.
Instant results.
That was really cool. Yeah, Brazil is huge. I mean, there's a lot of temples and everything here, but it's only natural. We have all sorts of religions going on here. Everybody has something to do with some religion.
Yeah, I haven't been to Brazil, but I feel like one thing that Brazil definitely has is that kind of openness towards new things. Maybe a similar openness that drew Guruji to California when he was on the East Coast. And I feel like in those kind of places, new ideas spread faster than in others.
Is good? Okay, go on.
Yeah, like you go to Europe or US and you say like, "Oh, there's a spirit," and and we talk to the spirit or whatever, people will say like, "What?" But here in Brazil, it's like, "Really? Where did you speak to the spirit?" Like everybody will believe immediately. It's no doubt.
Europe is quite unique in that sense because of the oppression for years. It was a very oppressed system, and you couldn't really talk about these things, or else you face severe punishment for, questioning or being blasphemic, I guess. So yeah, there's these new worlds. The Americas definitely have this air of freedom when it comes to spiritual and religious contexts, for sure. Take advantage of it. Yeah.
Carolina, is in terms of yoga, is SRF like the biggest yoga organization, or is there like others like?
I think it's pretty small compared to, for example, Hare Krishna
Oh,
Like
is it?
are really, really strong here.
Oh, interesting.
And also Vipassana is very popular here also. Like there was like this wave of when you were saying about your mother being afraid, I was actually sort of like having an informal marriage, like back in 2010. And I wasn't on this path, and I wanted to go take a Vipassana. And the guy I was with, he was like, no, you're not going. Because if you go, you're gonna break up with me when you come back. It's gonna be a mess. And I was like, well, what does that? No, you're gonna become like, you're gonna like elevate or whatever, and you're gonna. And I couldn't go. And then I tried again a year later or 2 years later, and there was like this huge, massive natural disaster in my town. Like everything was blocked. It was crazy. I rescued my parents with firefighter helicopter. It was really like a movie. And I couldn't go. And I was like, man, this Vipassana door never opened for me.
Wow, Guruji is raising fires and stuff to stop you from going to a different path.
I think I would have been traumatized, really, because like sitting on the floor for 10 days, like I have a little back problem. And at that time, it wasn't like, I didn't have this problem like that bad at that time. But I remember that I was like, the biggest challenge in my mind was like sitting for the whole day on the floor. That was just like, oh my God, it's gonna be tough. Like being in silence for 10 days, easy, because I live here on the farm, I can stay. It's no problem, but like sitting like hours and hours and hours, this still with the Kriya is a challenge. Like after 2 hours, I'm already like, okay, this is it. Let's go. But I bet it's a practice also, because it's all in the mind. If you can actually really, really relax the mind, then the body is gone. But the moment you reach that, then you lose it. Something comes in, it's the cat, it's the noise, it's something, and get distracted.
Yeah, glad to hear you've been divinely pushed onto the SRF path, and you're well on your way now. So everything happens for a reason.
I think.
But
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now I think we have covered this minute pretty well. Is there anything else we want to cover in this episode?
Not from me.
Then I want to say thank you to all the listeners for listening. Thank you for Carolina to come on, and Jai Guru, everybody.
Jai Guru, everyone.